Right, well, gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with the British Bourbon Society. You've been in the group for a little bit, Caleb, so you've probably been watching a few things that we've been talking about, and probably understand that you've got quite a few enthusiasts here across the pond.
Absolutely.
I don't think we're too crazy.
Enthusiastic. I'll say enthusiastic, not crazy.
Enthusiastic, we go with that. Thank you very much. So as a brief introduction, I mean, the reason that we're chatting today, we were introduced to your brand by Mike Veach a while ago. He brought a bottle of your 2-year rye to an event that we had in London, and it was towards the end of an event, and we'd had a few already, but we still all remembered how great that 2-year rye was, which speaks volumes. And since then, obviously, not too much has been known about the brand over here. Obviously, you're not on the shelves yet, but it's got kind of a little bit of a cult following behind the scenes. And we received a sample of your 3-year rye, took it to an event that we had held recently, and it did exceptionally well against some other excellent ryes. And in particular, I mean, there was the Pikesville 110. It came on top. The Peerless 3-year came on top, so that was excellent. So that's the reason why we're talking to you today. We want to know a bit more about your brand, know a bit more about the juice, about yourselves, and if you could tell us about yourselves.
Absolutely. So a little bit about the brand. John's going to cover that. I'm going to tap in here in just a second.
All right. My name is John Wadle. I'm our single barrel curator down here at Kentucky Peerless. So I have a fun, exciting job. I help Caleb and Nick, our other distiller, go through and find unique and special barrels to put into our program. Things that really stand out on the flavor wheel, I guess you would say, that are not very well balanced, that we want them to stick out on certain parts of the flavor wheel when we're doing these things. But it's a little bit of history about Kentucky Peerless. We originated back in 1889 when Henry Craver took over the Worsham Distillery and changed the name to Peerless. He wasted no time putting money into production. They went from doing about 8 to 10 barrels a day to doing about 200 barrels a day, somewhere around that number there. Family owned and operated. Once Prohibition came along, we kind of shut down during Prohibition, but we were able to sell most of our barrels through distribution through another distributor. On down the line, he had one daughter, Helena Craver, who married Roy Taylor Sr., so that's where the Craver name drops off, and you have the Taylor name pick up. They pretty much helped run the distillery through that era. And then fast forward about 100 years later, we have the 4th and 5th generation, Corky and Carson. That kind of picked up where Henry Craver left off. We started on March 4th, 2015. We filled our first barrel in over 100 years here at Kentucky Peerless. And then June 3rd, 2016, we opened up our doors to the public to kind of come in here and see what we're doing here, along with Corky and Carson, the 4th and 5th, father and son, and Caleb, our master distiller here at Kentucky Peerless now. We make rye whiskey and bourbon. We chose not to source out any product, so we do everything right here in-house. We cook here, distill here, bottle here. We have the largest rick house in downtown Louisville, where we house about 2,000 barrels right here on site, too, as well. Our DSP is number 50, so we were legally the number 50th distillery in the United States, which speaks volumes, considering that if we were just open up as we did, we would have been around in the 20,000 DSP numbers, to kind of give you an idea of how many distilleries are actually out there right now.
Isn't Buffalo Trace something like 231?
I believe they're up there. I think they're like 116, 113. You got Woodford Reserve is number 52. Wild Turkey's 139. Maker's Mark is like 444, somewhere around there. So it's nice to show people that we've been around a lot longer than some of your bigger brands. We just didn't produce anything in about 100 years. Now,
so what now?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Sorry, what made you decide to do this now?
I can't speak for Corky and Carson and them, but I believe they wanted to revive their great-grandfather's brand. They wanted to bring that kind of tradition of making whiskey and bourbon underneath one roof. We're a grain-to-bottle distillery, And I think they just wanted to make a good product. I mean, that's our main goal, is quality over quantity. We're more worried about the quality of the juice that we're putting out than the quantity of it. We make 10 to 12 barrels a day here. And I'll let Caleb kind of go over a little bit of our process and everything that we do here, though.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Good deal. So what's next?
Well, yeah, I was going to, obviously, Peerless have got a reputation for the, say, unique processes and craft that you put into your product. Perhaps you can tell us about what it is makes Peerless so unique.
Okay. So from the process side of things, I mean, you always obviously heard the rich family heritage, the history behind the brand, but that's also really coupled with a lot of new and innovative techniques that are helping us, like you said, make some really, really good whiskey. One of the things on the front end of the process that's going to be really unique against pretty much any whiskey in the world is that we use a sweet mashing technique. To my knowledge, it's single-digit producers within the United States producing a sweet mash, which is where you're going to start with fresh rye, fresh corn, fresh barley, all fresh grains, one generation of fresh yeast. Basically, you produce as fresh and floral and pristine a batch of beer as you can to start the process. And what that allows you to do when you distill it, pulls out a lot more grain character and a lot of sweetness, a lot of florals, a lot of grasses. Whereas if you reuse components through a process called sour mashing, where you're going to reuse a prior batch of yeast, you're going to reuse some stillage, some things that are going to recycle their way back into this process. It's similar to when you sourdough a bread, how it has that distinctive gritty taste. That translates through to the beer, that translates through to the alcohol. And when you do that, you really have to distill at a much higher proof, stripping out a lot of character from your whiskey. So right off the bat, we choose to go with a sweet mash. We're going to use a very cool, controlled fermentation to avoid any astringency generated during the fermentation. We're going to distill at a very low proof, which I mentioned our sweet mashing allows us to do, which is going to pull in a lot of grains, a lot of grasses, florals, and a good bit of sweetness. From there, we're going to proof it down and go into the barrel. And this is where Peerless is doing something that's really innovative in today's time, but was common practice 100 years ago. See, to be a bourbon or a rye whiskey, you have to go in the barrel below 125 proof. And realistically, the majority of producers like to hug this maximum for a simple reason. It's going to have a lot of cost savings associated with it. The more alcohol can fit into the same amount of space in that same barrel, which is pretty pricey, the less barrels I have to buy, the less warehouse space, the less labor. It really stacks up if you choose to add volume to that by proofing it down any further. But what people don't necessarily see in that is if you store it concentrated, you have to dilute it at the end of the process. So say you're going on the fringes. Say that your product is going from 125 proof down to an 80 proof. At that point, the only way that you can lower that proof at the end of maturation is by adding water. Water that didn't go through the brewing process, that didn't go through the mashing, the fermenting, the distillation. What's going to happen is that unflavored water is going to dilute the whiskey that you've worked so hard to create. So if you go from 125 proof down to 80 proof, 36% of the volume of that final bottle is water. Water didn't touch that barrel, didn't touch the grain, didn't touch any bit of it. So it just ends up diluting the flavors that you worked so hard to create. So from our perspective, yeah, we'll go ahead and spend a little bit more money on the front end by proofing it down to 107, using that very low barrel entry proof. And then at the end of maturation, we don't add a single drop of water. Everything is left at barrel strength, whether it be our single barrel or our small batch. And in that, all those full and robust flavors that we work so hard to create are going to be showing through.
They're non-chill filtered as well?
Correct.
Right?
So yeah, everything is at barrel strength, no chill filtration. And to give you an idea, John touched on our size and our scale. When we do a small batch, it's not 150 or 300 barrels coming together at a time. Our average batch size is 6 barrels or fewer.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible. Is that something that you always set out to do? Was that just through the process of discovery that you ended up at this
Well,
decision to do everything that you're doing today?
really, as far as where all the individual pieces of this came from, uh, I was very fortunate to kind of grow up in this area and to kind of come of age through the bourbon industry. Everyone is so welcoming and helpful. I was able to shadow under multiple people at multiple distilleries, kind of learning what makes every product that product, the practices that goes into it. And so as I was going through, I was able to kind of cherry pick these ideas, these things that I feel are paramount in making good whiskey. And it ranges everything from, like I said, things that are common practice, cleanliness standards, ways of distilling, making cuts, all the way down to the downright obscure. Because other than a few people, there's not many people using that low barrel entry proof. And like I said, I probably know less than 10 around the country that are using sweet mashing techniques. So
have you? Sorry, carry on. I was just wondering if have you heard any of any other distillers, talking to you and thinking, well, why didn't I think of that? Maybe I should change my processes now. I mean, this Caleb's producing some fantastic whiskey at 2 years old.
Well, we've actually saw a few. As you see more distilleries come online, you see a few people adopting these same ideas, and this is where I could say imitation and flattery and everything, but it's perfectly reasonable to believe that they came to the same destinations mentally as me, as far as what comes across making the best product. Everybody learns from one another, and that's the beauty of this industry. It's not a competition thing. It's everybody's just trying to make the best they can, and it's pulling influences from all around you.
Well, let me ask you this. Have you tried anything of the original Peerless whiskey?
We have not. And from a personal standpoint, that was actually a huge set of handcuffs taken off. Not having a set mash bill or a set process or a set proof, not having to replicate an old yeast strain or an old flavor profile allowed me, like I said, to really go through and cherry pick the things that I thought was going to make the best whiskey. Not necessarily what was going to be accurate to the technology 100 years ago, but accurate to what we could do.
Okay. Well, I've got some Peerless right here that you very kindly sent me. I was wondering, I mean, have you got any in front of you? Perhaps we could taste a bit together.
I see some. Give me a moment.
Brilliant.
I almost thought about that too. I thought we should have had a glass poured.
Sorry.
So have you tried any single barrels in our program yet, or have you only had our small?
I haven't. And I'll tell you why, because it's so difficult to get single barrels over here. Well, from the US anyway. I mean, we've been lucky enough to work with quite a few brands now and have done it ourselves, but they're few and far between. But I'd be very, very keen to try a single barrel from Peerless. I've got some in my glass right now. And Caleb, it's been dubbed as the bourbon drinker's rye.
Uh-huh.
Why do you think that is?
Well, a lot of rye whiskey really has kind of went all in on that spicy, on that oaky, on that herbal note, and it doesn't really develop those notes that we love in other whiskeys: sweets, caramels, vanillas, some of the brighter fruits, as well as some of that kind of that sweet, smoky character. And as you go through, as you work through this whiskey, you're actually able to pick up a lot of those notes that aren't just specifically in bourbon, but I've even pulled this just this morning. I had one that was kind of paid homage to Scotch, for instance. We have people who drink Japanese whiskey who will flip out over it. People who just kind of work their way around so many different spirits can pick out something that they like in this whiskey.
What I can tell straight away, I mean, we've done quite a few rye barrels, and all of them have been, you know, you get that typical rye spice. You do with this too, but what you get over here is a lot, I mean, it's a lot sweeter. It's very smooth. You get the caramel up front. I get a lot of kind of chocolatey notes as well.
Yes.
The
dark chocolate, kind of like a dry cocoa, similar like a chocolate. That's a note that's becoming more and more prominent, particularly with a rye, as it's crossing that 3-year threshold.
I get licorice as well.
Fairly common tasting note. One thing I love in this, the rye, as you mentioned, even though it has that boldness and that spiciness, it's not that it's subdued in this, it's that it's complemented. It's that it has that sweet oak, it has that caramel, it has those florals, things like licorice and cinnamon, and it has so much complexity to it. The harshness doesn't stand out and overwhelm the palate, it complements it.
Do you know what I would compare that note to? It's like a Four Roses OESK or something. Do you know what I mean?
I haven't carved my way through each of the different expressions of Four Roses yet.
Well, one of the single barrels is very floral. It's got very distinct floral notes to it. It's got a lot of that in it.
Okay.
But to get that from a rye is incredible. I mean, from my perspective, and everyone's perspective as well, typically at very young age, whiskies, I mean, they taste young.
Generally.
This doesn't taste young at all.
Well, and that's something that we actually even look into when we're grading our barrels. As I mentioned, we do average batch sizes of 6 or fewer. And so to be able to create balance and complexity in something that's only going to make around 1,200 bottles, you really have to go through, and it's not just a random 6. You have to go through and grade and find ones that are sweet to complement ones that are spicy, ones that are floral to complement ones that are really earthy, fruits to complement some of those drier spices. You really have to, it's a jigsaw puzzle to find these pieces that are going to come together and create this good batch. So it's really difficult to go through and find all these notes that are, they're just going to work.
It's complex, very complex.
Thank you.
You're making a bourbon as well.
That's the plan. So currently we're kind of playing the waiting game. We're going into the warehouse, we're sampling, we're tasting. I anticipate having something ready midway through this year, but at the end of the day, the whiskey's going to tell us when it's ready. Well, I mean, when we set out to do this, we never wanted to source a drop. We felt that would be a kind of a betrayal of all these practices that we wanted to put into place. It wasn't our vision to sell someone else's juices our own. We wanted to make our own. So in that, we had the dedication early on. We didn't want to source anyone else's. We didn't want to rush anything. So even though on the onset we hope to have a 4-year-old bourbon out sometime this year, next year, if the whiskey is not mature, it's not going to come out. The same with Sure Rye. Age is just a number. We strictly grade for maturity, and that's even during that grading process I was describing. We obscure the age. Anything that could give you a false indication or skew your judgment, we cut it out. It's just strictly whiskey in a glass.
So do you have a particular area of the brick house that is producing honey barrels right now?
So fortunately, we actually have a single-story warehouse that's going to produce very consistent conditions. So there's not going to be a phenomena where you have musty barrels that have to be aged twice as long on the bottom floor, or particularly over-oaked ones on the top floor, with good ones in the center. They all have that high airflow, medium moderated temperature that's synonymous with the middle of the warehouse, which is usually seen as making the premium whiskey. So we're really lucky in that we are small enough to have consistent conditions. Where a lot of our variances are going to come from is the day-to-day changes during the distillation. And you got to remember, these barrels, they're living, breathing things. I mean, it's not a phenomena where every single one is a carbon copy of the next. You got to remember, every tree is under slightly different stresses and benefits during its life. Different amounts of sugar and cinnamon, the oaks, the vanillas, everything is going to be different barrel to barrel.
I think that's what we all here love about single barrels. Prime example, we had a brand that we did a single barrel pick with, and 4 of them tasted pretty similar, and we were consigned that was probably going to be the flavor profile that we would be going for. However, one particular barrel, we're talking same juice, same area of the rick house, no reason for it to taste wildly different, tasted almost completely different. I mean, it was crazy. So like you say, I mean, it's a living, breathing thing, and it's the beauty of single barrels. What are you doing the same, adopting the same processes that you go through with your rye with the bourbon? Are you changing anything there in terms of entry proof, or?
Well, as far as the core principles behind it, the sweet mashing, the low barrel entry proof, the distillation proof, all that is going to track the same. Because if it's able to harvest the flavors efficiently in rye, it's able to do the same in bourbon. But the differences are going to rely on the raw components you start with. Obviously, bourbon being a corn-based whiskey rather than a rye-based whiskey, it's going to have a lot more earthiness. It's going to be a little softer, a little sweeter. It's not going to have that big rye pop. But what I'm tasting right now is actually come across very grassy, subtle sweet, and it's really allowing the barrel to also kind of step up because it's not quite as bold of a grain as the rye is. So same general tracking process, but we have to taste it for the corn to mature, because corn is going to mature slightly slower in the barrel than with the rye. They just mature at different rates.
On the maturity side of things, first question: what size barrels are you using? Are they standard size or?
We use
smaller?
a standard 53-gallon barrel with a medium toast and a number 3 char. It's actually made by Caleb Kilburn, which is located about 15 minutes down the road from us, so it's very close, very local barrel. But they kind of have the same reputation within their industry as we have within ours as far as making a premium product. So they're going to be making a lot smaller quantity of barrels, but they are seen as premium and their quality is to match.
Have you got any particular age in mind that you're kind of looking for your liquid to peak at in terms of maturity?
Honestly,
you think that the rye's probably going to top at 6 years or 8 years, for instance?
So far, everything's on an upward swing. We haven't been around long enough to kind of see anything fall off yet. I look forward to tasting through, and like I said earlier, the whiskey is going to tell us when it's ready. We have barrels that come mature the second they hit 2 or 3 or 4, and there'll be some that I'll still be wrestling with when they're 8 or 10. It's just every barrel's different.
So have you thought about barrel finishing at all? Not that you need to right now, but I mean, is it something that you're likely to dabble with?
That's a fair question. It's something I'm very interested in. I've kind of just been observing kind of from the background for right now. I got a few ideas in mind, but nothing is in motion at the moment.
What's your white dog like?
The white dog?
Yeah.
Oh, see, the beauty of good whiskey is that it's really good after it's been in the barrel for a few years. It as white dog is usually overwhelmingly grainy. It's going to be very grassy, but something that's actually been a consistent feedback from the different mentors, the different people who came in and tasted it, is that they can't believe how smooth it is. So even though it's overwhelmingly grainy, I mean, it's gritty. That's what it is. As a white dog, it actually has a lot of flavor. It's quite palatable. At that point, the rye really hasn't become spicy. It's just kind of, it's very overwhelmingly floral.
So have you got plans to sell the White Dog, or do you already?
No. The
No.
we for a brief period of time offered the White Dog in our retail shop, strictly as something for people to taste. But now that we've released not only our 3-year-old whiskey rye, we have a selection of single barrels available in our gift shop that all have different flavors and aromas and have cute little names to match. That's what our tourism experience is built around as far as on the tasting side of things. Basically, our gift shop single barrel program is kind of a representation as far as what we do outside of the building with different private partners, different groups. That way people who visit Peerless can understand what their local stores, what their local groups can order and have access to. And that's where John comes into play. He'll usually deal with different groups, different liquor stores, different restaurateurs who really want their own unique offering of Peerless or their own take on our flavor profiles, on what we have to show. Because as you taste through that whiskey, it's not a one-note wonder. It has all these different layers of complexity, and the way we're able to achieve that is that we go through and we put different barrels from different portions of the flavor wheel together. Well, when you're doing a single barrel process, you really want to select those individual notes, those individual characteristics, and showcase those. And you know what, John? I'm taking all your thunder.
No, you're fine. You're doing yeah, when it comes to our single barrel program, Caleb does a great job of creating these small batches that are very well balanced, that really kind of highlight each part of the flavor wheel he kind of created here for us to kind of go off of. So when we dive into our single barrels, we want to find those unique barrels. For instance, one of the first single barrels we ever came out with, we called Caramel and Vanilla. It just had such great notes in the nose and the taste of these rich kind of caramel, vanilla notes, even along with the flavor. So when we're diving into our single barrel program, those are the barrels that we're looking for, those unique barrels that either have, those strong floral and earthy notes in them, or the caramel and vanilla are sweeter notes. And then you have your traditional oak and pepper rye barrels, or rye drinker's rye that we may throw in there. But we really do like to take the time in our single barrel selection. We don't thieve them out from the barrels. We like to go ahead and get our samples ready for them when they come in here. We want to make sure we're putting out the best quality single barrels for them to actually try. So we like to go ahead and select all our barrels before they ever get in through our doors. That way we can have everything ready for them by the time they get here.
Perfect. How many have you done? How many single barrel selections?
We've done about 54 single barrels across the U.S. That's not including the ones that we've done in-house. The ones in-house were roughly around like 70 single barrels total if you include our in-house program that we do here too. But 54. So not a bad start to the single barrel program. And that includes urban groups, liquor stores, restaurants, all types.
How many have you done in Europe?
Europe? None, I don't think. But we're hoping to get over there. I've gotten a couple people reach out from over there interested in the single barrel program. So that's something we're working on and trying to tackle to get us over there.
Well, I've been speaking to Cordell, and he's been suggesting that we should come over and pick a barrel.
Pick a barrel. I spoke to somebody, it may have been you earlier in this week too. I can't remember who it was, but they were part of the British Bourbon Society, and I passed their information along to Cordell to get with you all.
Okay, cool. Hopefully that's something we can put together. Got a question for you, a bit left field. We've seen a ton of brands using actors to promote their whiskey, and we've seen Jim Beam with Mila Kunis, Matthew McConaughey with Wild Turkey, and more recently, I think it's probably a joke, but we saw an article and it was about Hulk Hogan advertising Barton.
Really?
Yeah. Well, it may be a joke, but it was an article in a bourbon publication about Hulk Hogan advertising Barton. Made us laugh. Either way, have you thought about using, or would you ever use an actor to help promote your brand? And if you ever wanted to, who would it be?
Well, we don't have any plans of that in the near future.
My fantasy would be the girl from Hunger Games. What's her name?
Jennifer Lawrence.
Jennifer Lawrence.
Oh yeah,
From
good choice.
Kentucky. So I've thought about it.
Thought about it.
He's clearly put more thought into it than I have.
You're too busy, Caleb. That's the trouble.
Yeah.
You've recently accepted the position of master distiller. Only recently, Caleb.
Yes, it's only been out for a few weeks now.
Why has it taken you this long to accept a position you're already doing?
Well, okay. So here's my view on that. Master distillership is not a position within a company, not in my opinion. Just because I may be the most experienced or the lead distiller within these four walls, it doesn't mean that I'm deserving of the same title as someone as great as Jimmy Russell. So it's something that early on they kind of offered me. I was their guy, but I put the brakes on. I didn't want it. I didn't think I was deserving of it. I had mentors with decades of experience, and I'd been doing it for a year or two. I didn't think that was worth it. Well, I went through, and we've had an excellent showing with our rye. We've won awards. We've had a lot of people on both the distillery and the commentary side, enthusiast groups, everyone coming through and singing Peerless's praises. And apparently that finally registered with Corky to the point where, regardless of my objections on the front end, he went ahead and he presented me with the title, and he actually did it at our company's Christmas party. So I was surrounded by friends and family, and I was completely blindsided, had no idea it was coming, and he presented me with this plaque that basically named me, and I cried like a baby, and we all hugged, and it was just a really special day for me.
I'll drink to that.
Cheers.
Cheers. Congratulations. Well deserved too. So do you guys have any questions for us at all overseas?
Not really. Hopefully we'll be over there soon and get you all a part of our single barrel program and have you all pick some of your all's own unique barrels from our program that we have here.
And it's one of those things, even if you're not, if you're going to be in the U.S., come by, check us out, give us a heads up, because it's really hard to describe how different single barrels can be across the pond. When you come through and when you see the complexity of the range, everything that Peerless has to give will make you a believer.
Amen to that. Is there anything that you would improve? Is there any improvements that you're thinking of making in the future for what you're doing?
Constantly. You never stop learning. You never stop improving. If you score 9 out of 10, there's always one more that you could have got. You can always do better, and that's really something we strive for. That's true of everyone from the people who greet you at the front door, the people who lead tastings, the distillers, the cookers. All of us are constantly pushing ourselves to improve, and that's something that's a really special company culture that comes from the top with Corky all the way down through everyone. I don't think there's a single person who doesn't take pride in what they do here, and that's something that's really special.
Well, if you enjoy what you're doing as well, you don't have to work a day in your life, as they say.
That's the truth. I haven't figured out why they pay me to show up here. I just kind of come in and look busy, and it works.
Well, if there's any jobs going, there's probably 2,000 people here that would bite your arm off. You mentioned other brands. What other? I know you're going to say that you drink Peerless, but what other brands would you drink if you were not drinking Peerless?
Well, it's one of those things. I like to say I'm kind of a student of the industry. So when I'm out and about, I mean, I know what mine tastes like. I want to see what barrel picks are my big favorite. I like to see everyone's barrel picks of different brands because I know what Knob Creek tastes like. but I want to know what your favorite Knob Creek tastes like, what your barrel pick for Knob Creek tastes like. And that not only tells me a lot about Knob Creek and its brand and its barrels, but it tells me so much about the individual account or the individual group. For instance, I was out in San Francisco doing market work, and I noticed a fellow had a whole collection of different barrel picks that he and his store had done. And he had a few samples there. I asked him what his favorite was, and he gave me a taste of a Russell's Reserve product. And it was super sweet and very floral, and it doesn't have that distinctive oaky bite the way a lot of Russell's products have. So then, in turn, when he was able to come to Peerless and visit, because I remembered that, I was able to show him a grouping of barrels that kind of mirrored that same soft yet flavorful quality. And he knew I was stacking the deck on him, but it's just something that's really unique, and I love tasting people's single barrel picks of other companies.
Well, all of ours have been quite different because what we do is we try to provide an opportunity to as many people in our group as we can. Obviously, we've got over 2,000 people. It's impossible to bring everybody, but what we don't want is to have one single pallet picking every single barrel. So you may find that, you know, we show you samples of some of the single barrels that we've chosen, and it doesn't really follow a particular pattern other than we insist on them all being barrel proof.
Trust me, if you bring 3 people to the tasting and you try 3 single barrels, you'll have 4 different opinions as far as what's best.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a flow up. I intentionally meant for that to be mathematically impossible.
I've got a question for you. Another question. I was on your website and I noticed something. Have you seen this before?
How do you? He has a bottle of the very old Prohibition era Henry Craver. Yeah. Do you have? Are you grabbing the box?
Yeah.
Does it have any juice in it?
No, it's empty. I'm very sorry to get your hopes
excited.
Up. But yeah, well, it's an old bottle. It's still pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
But listen, I noticed that this is something that's got a history with your brand. And I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about it.
So we have one that does have.
Oh, cool.
But as you can see, the tax seal is still intact.
Well, listen, if I come to Kentucky, I'll bring this with me. It's yours. Call it a housewarming gift.
Sir, thank you. That
My pleasure.
Corky's really going to like you. Where did you find that?
I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you.
I like my life. Don't kill me.
No, I've got quite a few bottles in my bunker. I managed to acquire this through various means. But yeah, I'm quite interested in the old stuff as well, particularly National Distillers era, Dusty Juice. It's my passion.
Well,
but this one really intriguing. I would have been better if there was juice still in it.
Well, like I said, there is juice in that bottle, but none of us will touch it.
You won't open it?
No. It's one of those things. I don't think that it would ever be able to live up to where I have it built up in my mind. So I'll just leave it as this giant, amazing, perfect whiskey and let that be what I'm shooting for.
I've met somebody that has tried it, and they say it's delicious. But like you said, no bottle is that delicious to ruin the don't ruin the bottle. It's historic.
That's the way we look at it anyway.
Yeah.
So in the opening, did you mention much about the Prohibition era and how we sold?
Mm-hmm.
Well, go through it.
So during Prohibition, when it came along, we didn't have a license to sell here in Kentucky, but we were able to get rid of over 63,000 barrels through a distribution company. That included, up in Chicago, up through Chicago, through the Palmer Hotel, which Henry Craver, Corky's great-grandfather, owned for a short period of time as well, where he got introduced to the Walgreen brothers and helped them kind of get their start. We weren't doing production or anything, everything had shut down, but we were lucky enough to still distribute during that whole Prohibition era until Henry Craver passed away after Prohibition.
Were you one of the distilleries that were mandated by the federal government?
We did not have a license to sell during Prohibition, so we weren't able to continue production or anything like that. But we had plenty of barrels sitting around in order to be sold through a distribution company. I believe it's even on that box, the American Medicinal Spirits Company. That's even on the bottle that you have. It should be right there on the bottle. That's who we were able to. I'm not sure if that was the only distribution company that we had to sell our barrels to, but luckily enough, we were able to still sell plenty of our product during Prohibition.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, have you managed to uncover any of the old bottles anywhere else from Peerless?
We have another bottle that would have been used for the state of Illinois during Prohibition. Unfortunately, we do not have our hands on the bottle for the state of Kentucky for Prohibition. That belongs to a gentleman in Italy, actually. We've located one. He just refuses to sell it to us because he doesn't want to break his collection. But I hear Corky tell us that he still calls them every once in a while just to bug him about it. Hopefully, he'll sell us that bottle one day.
Some will cave.
So, yeah, some. But the one bottle that you have as well, we found ours, that one, I believe, up in New York at an auction where we located that one. So we're always searching. We're always searching for bottles and things like that to kind of show people our legacy and, everything that we've done here at Peerless. It's just really exciting.
Well,
our family history is so rich. It goes way back, and it kind of helps people. We were one of the main distilleries here in the state of Kentucky when it first all started getting big and everything. So it's nice to show people exactly how long we've been around for, and that, like I said, once again, we didn't have a license, but you still found some of our product during Prohibition being sold around.
Are you on the official Kentucky Bourbon Trail now?
We are on the craft tour and the official Kentucky Bourbon Trail. So how many are there? Like 15 of us now? 16, somewhere around there.
Just on the craft, yeah.
Just on the craft tour itself. But we're the only full functioning operational distillery in downtown Louisville. So you can literally come into our distillery and see the whole process, from where we mill the grains to where we cook to where we distill to where we even store them. And if you're lucky enough, you can come in and taste some of our sweet mash out of the fermenters too. Of course, when no one's looking, I'll give those. But it's just really exciting to see what we're doing down here. Having Caleb and being able to also to learn from, I know he won't agree, but one of the best people coming up right now, to be able to be, just right underneath them, learning from one of the future best master distillers that are going to be out there, in my opinion. But it's a family atmosphere. There's only about 23 of us that work here too, so we're a small family here as well. A lot of hands-on experience. We do a little bit of everything.
Well, I think there's a lot of people here that would absolutely love to take you up on your offer and take a tour around your distillery and dip their finger in the sweet mash.
Anytime.
If you've never had it, it's totally different from trying a sour mash, in my opinion, when you actually get to try it in the fermenters. And the smell alone just makes you hungry.
Brilliant. Have you guys ever been to the UK?
Never.
You've never been?
I've been out of the country one time.
So, what's your favourite soccer team?
It's a tough one. I'm going to say Manchester.
If you don't know, it's Tottenham Hotspur is the correct answer.
There we go. That was my second.
Sorry?
I said that was going to be my second favorite team.
Who's going to be the first?
I don't know if I should tell you now. Manchester United. Is that okay?
What?
No, I knew it. But we don't.
No, we're not just all from London.
We have just a little minor league team here.
Just me, probably. Sorry?
I said we do have a minor league team, though, here in Louisville.
I was going to say Louisville Football Club for mine. I was going to play hometown favorite.
I guess I can change my answer. 2-time champs here, by the way.
Wow.
Our Louisville soccer team.
Pretty cool. But your basketball's a big thing over there, right? And
Yes.
horses.
Basketball and football.
Yeah, and horses. I heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Cool.
voice behind the camera says horses and bourbon.
Is bourbon a sport?
Yes, if you
It
do it
can
right.
Well, I'm going to the Olympics.
You need to come to the Kentucky Derby. The Olympics.
I heard it gets
nothing but
crazy.
the Kentucky Derby.
I heard it gets crazy.
The
around that
Olympics
time.
of bourbon.
Oh, I got you.
You been drinking, John?
Yeah, a couple small matches.
Well, guys, I just want to thank you for taking the time on in your day to chat with me and chat with the Bourbon Society about your whiskey and give us a brief kind of overview of who Kentucky Peerless are. I think we've, I think everybody now has an idea of who you are, and I think we would all love to come and see you. And you're not on the shelves now, but I think as soon as you are, I think you get a lot of new fans.
Hey, I look forward to it, and like I said, come visit me.
We will.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Chaps.
Give us a little access to your group.
Yeah, thank you again for having us here.
Our pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Caleb.
Cheers.
Cheers.